All right. Good evening, commissioners, and welcome to your evening meeting. Vice Chair Rogers, if you call us to order, then I'll do a roll call for you.
Thank you and good evening. I'd like to say hello to all of you. It's good to see so many people here tonight. I'm sitting in for Catherine Harrington, our chair. She's on the East Coast taking care of some family matters, so she won't be here this evening either. And she's not here either in person.
They can't hear you.
Oh.
I think we've got some trouble.
Yeah, we got feedback issue here.
I can,
This iPad is given to VPAC, so he's fixing it. You can go ahead.
no,
They can't hear.
out there,
They can't hear.
so we'll have to wait. We're having audio issues, so we're working on fixing that.
They can hear you, Pam.
Yeah, they can hear you. Yeah, can speak up. Can you hear me now? Nope. Nope.
We can hear it.
But they can't. Right. Yeah.
Can you hear this one? No? You can hear? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Is it your mic on? Ruth?
Yep, it's on.
Testing?
Yeah, testing. I think, you could- Jerry, would you mind testing, see if you're okay?
Mine's getting
This is a test.
back.
Yeah. All right, I think everybody can hear us at this point. Thank you for that. What I was saying is I'm the vice chair. I'm sitting in for Catherine Harrington tonight. She's on the East Coast. Her mother is having some health issues, and so she's back there attending to that. We're going to go ahead and start the meeting. We have a roll call, and Kevin, if you'd do that, please.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair. Commissioner Fye,
Present.
Commissioner Treese,
Here.
Commissioner Willie,
Here.
Vice Chair Rogers.
Here. We're going to take things a little bit out of order from what we normally do. We're going to take, and just to tell you, on our consent agenda, there's an item 5, which is the approval of a bid award authorizing a contract for some shelters. We're taking that off the consent agenda, so it won't be on the consent agenda. We're going to be handling that separate. And so and then we'll go to oral communication, public communication. We're going to ask, or I'm going to ask in a moment for our commission to suspend our rules. It's normally 10 minutes up front. We're going to ask that be extended to 30 minutes. So we'll just divide so that we'll get more people who can speak, and we'll just divide the time up. So with,
Excuse me, Vice Chair. I think it's important to say we're moving the agenda piece from the consent, but we will be voting on it
yeah,
tonight.
it'll be taken care of. It's just a matter of pulling it off the consent. The consent items are approved with one motion, and there's 10 of them tonight, less one that we're just now pulling. So we'll approve that with one motion. It'll allow our staff, and there's many of them in the audience as well as at home or elsewhere in the building, it'll let them go ahead and proceed with their business, and we'll take care of this. It takes about 2 minutes. So is there any discussion on any of the consent agenda items? And again, we'll remove 5. Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand so we can count those. Passes unanimously. So we just took care of the consent agenda except for item 5. Now we're going to skip back to public communication, normally 10 minutes total, but I would ask this board to suspend that particular time limit in our rules and change it to 30 minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, we are suspended, so we're going to have a 30-minute. Now, Kevin, I understand most of the folks here are on a particular agenda item, but do we have others who are not?
That is correct, Mr. Vice Chair. I was advised we have one that is on another issue unrelated to the Aloha one. So my recommendation is we let him go first for the 2 minutes, and then we'll proceed on the other issue.
That's
So,
perfect.
Mr. Claus, would you like to come forward and speak?
I think it's a full 2, yeah. And Jim, if you'd introduce yourself and say you're from Sherwood, that would be great.
Thank you. Robert James Claus, at 22211 Southwest. First, I want to say apologize. Last time I was here, I had gone in for what they called a double vasectomy, and they had gone too far. They went in my liver. And when I woke up, they gave me the shining nose. You probably have 6 months to live. So I was a little upset about it, but the liver healed, so I'm happy. And I apologize. I've never had any suggestion of this board or your staff. And the second thank you is you did a superb job on getting staff together and solving the Cedar Brook Way problem. But I never had the problem that I want to alert you to, and it is merely we're having a heavy dispute at Sherwood now with the new city manager. You hired in Clean Water Services, our old city manager, over a policy that we developed with Norma Euler. And then Hitchcock and everybody followed it. They're angry at me because I took them to LUMA because I needed to establish a base record so I could prepare a 14th and a Fifth Amendment suit where process our attorney. And I'm just suggesting be very careful, if I may be so bold, and I'm not trying to be rude for God's sakes, and I hope you know that. If you're not careful, the city of Sherwood is trying to drag Clean Water Services into this. And as much as I know Diane Taniguchi-Dennis and like her, she better back off and look really careful because this policy is ironclad in Sherwood. And they're now attempting to reverse it. My opinion, but that said, I'm sure you will because you manage your staff and we do appreciate the time and all. So Susan said, make sure you don't be lost one hearing aid. Well, it's better than I instead of a liver. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Claus.
Being here.
I
Is-
appreciate very much you letting me do this.
Is there any other members of the audience that has any comments on any other topic unrelated to ALOA? Did I miss anyone? Okay, back to you, Mr. Vice Chair.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So to be very clear, we have suspended our normal rules. We're going to take 30 minutes now of testimony, and so that you know what we'll do, after that testimony, we won't respond, but we'll take it. We then have a couple of proclamations and a appointment to a board and commission, and then a couple of action items, and then we'll take up the ALOA issue. So if you really want to hear what we finally decide, it'll be a little later this evening. But because of the number of people here, we wanted to give you an opportunity to speak. Since we're 30 minutes, how many people do we have?
Mr. Vice Chair, we have 16 plus any members that would be online. So I think suggestion would be to keep within the 30 minutes to just about minute 45 per person.
Okay, it's going to be about 1 minute and 30. Before we start that, what we also agreed at our work session today is Jess Larson will come up, and I see her starting to make her way up, and she's going to give a short presentation on the ALOA issue, and then we'll take the testimony. So you know the drill, his name and all that.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers, members of the board. My name is Jess Larson. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm your Assistant Director for the Department of Housing Services, overseeing our homeless services program. Pleased to be with you this evening, just to provide you a brief update with some of the on some of the work underway relating to both the agenda item you'll consider later, and also some public testimony you're going to hear this evening. First, to talk about some of our shelter expansion work underway here in Washington County. As you're well aware, we have been moving quickly to expand shelter capacity in the county to serve people experiencing homelessness who are unsheltered. And thanks to funding available through the voter-approved Metro Supportive Housing Services measure and additional efforts underway through the governor's executive orders and funding as a portion of those executive orders, we've been able to expand quickly our shelter capacity in the last couple of years from approximately 50 year-round shelter beds to now more than 400 shelter beds in operation throughout the county every night of the year. And as part of that shelter expansion work, we've heard very clearly from our community and through our local implementation plan, which is the body of work that guides that programmatic expansion, that geographic distribution as well as a variety of shelter types are really important to ensure that our sheltering system meets all the needs of our community who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And so alternative shelters are an important part of that shelter continuum or shelter system, and are one of the forms of shelter that we offer and are working to expand. Oftentimes, these alternative shelters can be popped up quickly in temporary locations to be urgently responsive, which is exactly consistent with the direction from the governor's executive orders and our plan underway with those executive orders. All of our shelter programs offer 24-hour-7 staffing and security, access to basic needs like hygiene and shelter and showers, and also 3 meals a day, wraparound supports through behavioral health case management, case managers who are working on housing solutions so people can exit the shelter programs into stable housing. And they are all operated by our community-based partners. So we are grateful to have these 400 and so shelters underway, and as you know, we are working to expand and bring more online as soon as possible. And to help do that, we've created some shelter siting guidelines. About a year ago, we went through a community engagement process to create the community guidelines on equitably siting shelter throughout the community. And this document helps inform how and where we create new shelter capacity in our community and the community engagement processes we conduct when we've identified a location for a future shelter. So this work is underway all the time with our jurisdictional partners and our community partners, landlords seeking opportunities to create new shelter opportunities. And we're really grateful when an opportunity comes forward and we pursue it to the best abilities of the staff to inquire if it meets the technical needs of creating a shelter program and also the guidelines that were established through that community engagement process. Currently, we have about 3 potential shelter program sites underway in various stages of consideration and getting underway in community engagement. So the one location you're going to hear about tonight is a partnership with the Aloha Methodist Church on 198th Avenue, where we were reached out to by the leadership of the faith community with their interest in partnering with the county to offer a potential shelter program. So we've been working with them for the last several months, and it looks like this is a viable site that will work as a temporary shelter program using the alternative pod shelter model for about 30 individuals. And we have begun community engagement to begin working with the community to discuss what a good neighbor agreement how to engage in, how to create a good neighbor agreement with the community, with the faith community that's hosting us and the future shelter operator, Open Door, who will operate the shelter program. That work just got underway on May 16th and will continue. Our next meeting with the community is scheduled for June 15th. And then finally, the action item before you this evening is specifically relating just to the acquisition of the shelter pods that will be used at this site and some of the other sites that are are under consideration. So we're through the RFP process, we have identified a suitable shelter pod structure that we would like to acquire 60 units of, to locate 30 here at the Aloha Methodist Church site and 30 at another site, as well as 4 hygiene pods. And so that is the action item that you will be taking up later, and how they all relate together for this shelter expansion work underway in Washington County. So with that, I hope that is a sufficient update for you to proceed with your meeting, and I'll be available later for any questions you might have.
All right, just before we jump into our testimony, again, the item will be heard by us as far as action a little later. It's under item F3, if any of you are following along our agenda. That's very customary. If we take things off the consent, they all jump down to the bottom of our agenda. That's just the way we've historically worked. So with that in mind, we're now going to jump into the communication piece. And Kevin, you will not only time, but you'll call people up, and you say it's about a minute and a half or something like that?
Yeah, about a minute 45.
Minute 45, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll call you up 2 at a time. So first we have Paul Santiago and Matt Kilbert to come forward.
Thank you. And if you just give your name and address so we can have for the record, that'd be perfect.
Sure. My name is Paul Santiago. I live in Aloha.
And my name, do we go together or separate?
Oh, you'll go next, yeah.
Okay. I asked for reevaluation of item 5 on the consent agenda with concerns of the purchase of the pallet shelters at the Aloha United Methodist Church, among other locations for this so-called transitional homeless housing. In today's agenda, the Housing Department notes both support and opposition to the plan, yet this does not reflect the overwhelming wave of opposition that has emerged from our community. We're not merely divided on the issue. The vast majority of us strongly disagree with placing a safe rest village within a residential area. Given the complex issues of mental health and substance abuse often prevalent in the homeless population, alternate locations must be considered. We're also concerned with the department's lackluster community engagement. Residents are learning about the proposal through word of mouth rather than through the department. This is not only disappointing, but it also erodes trust. Furthermore, assertions in today's agenda by the Housing Service Department that there are no known concerns about the pallet shelter model contradicts the clear anxieties expressed in recent community meetings. The dismissive response to these worries is disheartening and implies an unfortunate tone of superiority. In closing, I request the board postpones approval of this bid until more community feedback is factored or preferably a non-residential location is considered for this project. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for being on time. That's great. Please.
Hi, I'm Matthew Kleber, and I'm on 195th, right about 1,000 feet from where the community is going to be built. First off, Nafisa, Jerry, Pam, Roy, thank y'all for being here and giving us the space to talk to you guys. I appreciate it. I can only imagine what it's like from your side of this. I'm sure it's very different. I'm in full support of finding ways to make creative and meaningful impacts to help people without homes and those that are displaced. The Aloha Inn, the fairgrounds, they were all great decisions and great moves to address the homelessness in our community. And they've made great impact, and I want to thank the lady that was here. They've made some great work. The middle of a working class neighborhood is not a conductive place to create a community like this. I know that together we can find an equitable location across the county that can provide better access to public services and transportation, services which we know these people desperately need in order to step up and take the next step and join and become more contributing members of society, which is what most of them want to do. To this date, there's been zero proactive communication from the team working on this. We as a community have felt really unheard and uncared for by them. Thank you again for hearing us today and giving us a space to try to talk. The Aloha Housing Project, while it may help a few, I worry it's going to have a long-term negative impact on many of us. I grew up in a small town. My partner grew up in the Philippines in a small hut with no running water, no electricity, no necessities. We worked from nothing to buy our first house in this community, 1,000 feet from where you're going to set this up. I may have to sell my house because I can't take the financial risk and move into an apartment and step back and try to fight to get back to home ownership again because I can't worry and risk it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mark Marsh and Jenna Trust.
What would you like to say, John? Boy, I'm nervous. My name is Mark Marsh. I've lived in Aloha for the last, I thought you were going to let me introduce myself before you started to click the time. Could you put it back to 1:45, please? It's a planned 2-minute drill, but, you know.
IT staff, can we reset to 1:45?
Go ahead while we're waiting.
Okay. I'm providing input regarding the placement of sheltering facilities in Aloha, including the proposed Safe Rest Village at the United Methodist Church, the Aloha Inn transitional housing, and the prospects of sheltering additional homeless on a property west of the Aloha Inn. Washington County's placement and proposed placement of homeless services in Aloha is discriminatory for the following reasons. The county is relocating an unbalanced number of its unsheltered persons to Aloha. If it moves forward with its current plans, over 50% of the homeless population per the county's 2022 study will be sheltered in less than 1 square mile radius within Aloha, an unincorporated city that makes up less than 10% of the county's total population. Of note, 54% of Aloha's population is of an ethnicity other than white and reflects in the student population of Century High. Also, the planned placement of facilities is discriminatory to our county's homeless. A non-discriminatory approach would be to place sheltering facilities throughout the county as stated in the Washington County's community guidelines, expanding shelter programs with equity, so they can be reasonably accessed by those who need them, and so the homeless challenge is born with more equity. The placement of the Safe Rest Village at the United Methodist Church in Aloha contradicts the principles outlined in the county's commissioner guidelines, specifically under the subheading Geographic and Demographic Distribution and Attention to Local Community Impacts. It is imperative that we adhere to these guidelines in order to promote a more inclusive and just society.
Thank you, Mark.
Gave you another 30 seconds, which is good.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenna Trost, and I live about 3 houses down from Aloha United Church. I speak for myself and many of my neighbors here when I say we felt absolutely blindsided by this pod village being put into our neighborhood. The county did an atrocious job with communications, and my background is in communications, which seems to be the county's pattern of work, not only here in Aloha, but also in the Forest Grove location, where all neighbors have been pretty much blindsided and communicated to each other as such. You talk of good neighbor agreements, but agreements are not one-sided, nor are they something that should be shoved down people's throats. As of right now, it seems you have given us absolutely no choice in this situation. The people who voted for you and chose you, your constituents, are not happy with this decision. They are upset about not being heard. Today, we are demanding to be heard, and we appreciate you giving us that time. If this village is to move forward, and many of us would like it to be in another location, but if that is not the case, we have 3 senior citizen homes, we have a daycare in the neighborhood, so many children. We at least need to have some rules and regulations. This cannot be a low barrier to entry camp. We need background checks. We cannot allow people with history of violent crime or sexual assault history in their background. We do not want drug use, either in the camp or outside of it. There needs to be rules. This needs to be a 24-month only contract. If we're gonna have this in our backyard, then the county needs to share the burden with us and have it moved every 24 months. This can't not just sit in our backyard. We're worried about the property being purchased and it being permanent. There needs to be people on site at all times. At Hillsborough, there are not people on site at all times like you guys are saying, and you're not keeping the promises that you're making on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tessa Walsh and Michael Palmer.
Again, name and address if you could, please.
Hi, I'm Tessa Walsh. I live in Aloha. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be heard. So as you can see, we have quite a big support of people that feel that there's a better place for this village that would be both better for our community experiencing homelessness as well as us. There are houses, I don't know if any of you have visited the site, there are literally houses 100 feet from where this camp is going in. There are school bus stops all along 198th, which are less than 100 feet from where this encampment is going in. And to have a low barrier, no background check, no whatever, and this location is just not, there's a better place for it.
Does that conclude your remarks?
Yes, we would hope that you would postpone this so we could, as a community, find a better location for this encampment.
Thank you very much. Please.
My name is Mike Palmer. I am a business owner, taxpayer, homeowner, Navy veteran. I live about 500 feet to the front door of my house from where this proposed camp is set to be put up. The people who live in this neighborhood are invested in this neighborhood. Many people have been there for 10, 20, 30 plus years and have built a community and a neighborhood of friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Continually being fed to us is the words community and neighbors and that we need to take care of them. But the people who are going to be brought in are not our community members, they are not our neighbors. They're mostly people from other cities, other states, and other countries, and they just need some place to hang out, and that's what they're trying to give them in the middle of our neighborhood that we have established and we've invested in. They have no investment in it. They have no concern over whether it's clean, safe, or healthy for the children or anybody else in the neighborhood. The controls of the safe rest are set to be inside their fence, but once they leave the fence and are free to wander the neighborhood, no one has any watch over them. They're put out to be trusted on their own. This is basically unacceptable for a community with families and people who are looking for just to continue living in a safe and friendly neighborhood. And I would sincerely hope you would consider that before you move forward in placing these people into the middle of our community. Thank you.
Next, we have Barbara McMains and Ed McMains. Okay. Mary Brimmer and Shane Boyle.
Shane Boyle, a resident of Aloha. Where has the public process been on this decision to set up a rest village in our neighborhood? I'm only here tonight because of neighbors informing me of this upcoming board decision, and I could find very little information on the county website to even research what this decision was about, how it might impact my family, my neighbors, my friends. Government that operates in the shadows is not a representative democracy. You're being asked to vote on something that clearly has not undergone an appropriate public process. We're all witnesses to that here tonight. What you're about to vote on is going to irrevocably change our neighborhood for potentially the next decade. I'd like to ask you some questions to consider as you move into your decision later on tonight. What process did you as a board use to identify that this is the best place for a rest village? Did the board consider the future costs of bringing wraparound services to this fairly developed out location? Did the board evaluate if the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District has the resources in this location to support a rest village? A low barrier shelter potentially could equal more crime that we, the residents, will have to shoulder in future ESPD costs passed on to us. Has the board considered the safety of the campers? This location has no sidewalks on a busy commuter road, no center turn lane, and these campers are not going to be safe, just as well as the drivers who have to drive that road every day. Finally, does the Methodist Church have the financial resources to sustain this effort for potentially the next decade? And if they don't, will that bill be passed on to us, the local residents? Thank you very much for this time.
So my name is Mary Beamer. My property backs up to the church. The church knows me, and they did not come to me and ask how I felt about this at all. You call this a safe rest village. I will not sleep safely now, okay? Having 30 felons, criminals, mentally ill people wandering my back fence every day. I will no longer be able to keep my back doors open because I back up to the church and feel safe. I checked into selling my home. My realtor tells me if I wanted to sell my home, I have to disclose that there's a safe rest village or a homeless camp in my backyard, basically. So none of us can sell our homes right now because who's gonna buy one next to that? I was told I cannot put a fence up higher than 7 feet by the county. I'm left with no options here other than put up with 30 people, felons, criminals in my backyard, and I'm the one that's not gonna sleep one night for the next 700 days. It's easy for you guys to check off a box of this is your to-do list. Okay, this is my business, I'm gonna do this, it's great, hey, it's great for the community. But it's not great for all of us neighbors. There's nothing great about this. We're the ones that are losing. I'm the one that's gonna lose sleep every day. I'm the one that isn't gonna be able to, live safely in my own neighborhood anymore. Worry about drug paraphernalia coming over for my children, my grandchildren that come to visit. My house is where we gather. I'm not gonna want anybody to gather anymore. It's like, I don't feel safe, and how is that fair to us? I work every day. I contribute, I pay taxes. I just don't understand this logic here. That's all I got.
All right. Next, we have Dan Spakard and Alan Ballantine.
Hello, my name is Alan Ballantine, and my back fence will also border this proposed camp. In fact, I have a little bit of elevation to my home, so my back deck will look right in to that camp. One of the things that I wanted to bring, everybody's talking about, crime, and I want you to understand what this neighborhood is. I raised my children. I have lived there for 30 years in this home. I raised my children in a place where kids play baseball and basketball in the streets. We live in a nugget, a diamond of safety and security, which this will destroy. This is the thing that we're upset about. I also, as you can tell, am a senior. I have worked 30 years of sweat equity into my home so that I could sell it when I retire and move to a small community. I will not be able to sell my house. I have a 4-bedroom house. What family is going to move into a house that looks into a homeless shelter? It won't happen. So my equity in my home will be destroyed. Lastly, it's been mentioned, you will be, I believe, marooning these people at this location. There are no sidewalks. There is infrequent bus service. How is this a good place to put a shelter? Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name's Dan Spraker. I too live in Aloha. I'm a neighbor with Alan, and I'm also a 6-year employee of Washington County, so I work here as well. So I am sympathetic to the current crisis, and I actually voted to help on the ballot measure that was out there, and I do applaud the work that the Housing Department is doing. We need to find homes for the houseless that are out there, and I applaud their effort. However, I want to bring up one point that she made was geographic distribution. There was talk about having them in geographic dispersed areas, but as Mr. Marsh pointed out, you have the Aloha Inn, and in less than a mile, you're putting in another housing village and putting these two sites together. So where's the geographic distribution? I also want to talk about community engagement. You know, it was very sad for me to see as a Washington County employee to see the lack of communication from the county to the residents of Aloha. We found out about this through word of mouth, Facebook, next door. There was no engagement from Washington County until we heard about the NIMBY meeting that the church was holding earlier this month. So we decided we're all going to show up there in force and make our voices heard. The other thing I'd like to bring up is I've read through the governor's emergency declaration as well as the attached executive orders. Nowhere in there does it state that it supersedes local ordinances or zoning laws. This church is zoned institutional, which strictly prohibits the placement of manufactured residences on their property. How are we going to skirt that? Let's see here. I think everything else has been said, so I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, next we have Jin Han and Alex Pichenik. Zach Hughes? Is it, oh, Jeff, yeah. I apologize.
Go ahead and start.
Hello, my name is Alex Pichenik, and I live just around the corner from Aloha Methodist Church. There's not a whole lot that I can add to what's already been said, but with respect to this site being inappropriate, I would just like to point out that there's no sidewalks immediately next to it. All down 198th, there's almost no sidewalks. Down 195th, if you look at the map, there's no sidewalks. Most of the people that will probably be living there will most likely be walking. So they will be walking either to the mall on Baseline and 185th or the mall on TV Highway and 185th. They will be walking down Johnson, no sidewalks, down 187th, no sidewalks, and down 198th. So there's going to be a major safety issue with respect to cars and pedestrians. It's probably going to be like 50 of them or so. Also, like it's been said before, there's no buffer between the pods and people's front yards and backyards. How is that appropriate? And it's not fair to our neighborhood to house such a large proportion of the Washington County's homeless population. Also, I'm a parent. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She takes the bus home from school, and she takes the bus to school. How are we going to just let this 11-year-old girl stand on the corner while we're getting ready for work when there's, a 30 to 50 drug addicts and who knows who, because you're not doing background checks, walking right down 195th to one of those malls without sidewalks? Thank you. That's all I have.
My name's Jeff Honey. I live maybe 300-400 feet from where this is, across the street from the Aloha Methodist Church. And in all honesty, I'm just feeling railroaded. The only way I found out about this was I'm on my way home from church and I see a protest. I feel like whoever is in charge of making these decisions that affect our community has had absolutely zero consideration for the people who work hard to live in this neighborhood, who go to work every single day to pay mortgages to live in this neighborhood. My wife and I have been scrambling to try to comb the internet to try to find out what is even going on. And the things that we read are that these pods don't affect crime in the area, that they don't affect property values, that they're gonna have continual, somebody there 24/7, but for the last several years, we've been watching a homeless camp on the corner of Baseline and 197th. The police are there every single day. They brought porta potties in, they brought garbage cans in, and the property was destroyed. They had to bring in hazmat crews to clean up the garbage and the needles and the trash that was there. I don't understand how whoever's in charge of this can say that we're going to have one person on staff that's going to make sure that this doesn't happen on a much larger scale, not to mention those people who don't fit inside this community. There's 30 spots, right? Where are the others that want to be in these spots going to go? They're going to be camped in front of my house. They're going to be camped in front of all of our houses because there's only 30 spots. So I am strongly opposed to this. It is not the right place. A neighborhood is not the right place for this. Thank you.
Kevin, before you call the next two people up, time check. Half hour is what the board agreed. What?
Yes, so the half hour will expire at 7:18 p.m.
So we got about
7 minutes.
Yeah, about 7 minutes. How many people are left?
So we just have Zach Hughes as the last person that signed up in the room, and then we'll move to online. Is there any other members in the auditorium that I missed that wants to provide comment on this item? Okay, so Mr. Hughes will be the last in-person one.
Good evening, I'm Zach Hughes. I live around the corner from the church. My background in construction management has given me a wealth of experience in contracting and collecting proposals. So far, the county's action on this has left me some questions into how we're going about the contracting and proposal process. There's been a lot of talks about a good neighbor agreement that is yet to been established with the neighbors. I think it's a critical flaw to proceed in contracting and discussing with operators plans for this Safe Rest Village without that portion of the scope being defined. The county will not get accurate nor wholesome bidding and replies to their proposals without this in place. Secondly, a failure to have developed a site plan for this village makes me nervous as a neighbor. I don't want to see this look like the camp next to Winco and Hillsborough. It's a temporary chain link fence with cut open tarps. I also have concerns about the infrastructure that's available to actually run this camp. For those of you who don't know what the church looks like, it is not a set of a grounds that has been maintained. I have concerns that it's going to willful undertaking infrastructure-wise to provide electricity, water, and sewer to the camp, and all of these items, according to what I have read, are infrastructure improvement to the grounds, not for a Safe Rest Village, which would mean they are outside the bounds of HB 2006 and should need to go through the proper permitting process. Voting yes to approve the acquisition of these pods prior to these items being fully vetted is, in my opinion, irresponsible. Thank you.
Do we have people online?
So would any members watching this meeting via Zoom like to provide public comment for up to a minute 45 on this Aloha Methodist Church? Did you please raise your hands? So the first one raised here is Rose Medlock. Rose, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for a minute 45.
Thank you. My name is Rose Medlock. I live just a few blocks from the Aloha United Methodist Church. Every resident from the neighborhood surrounding the church I've heard from supports solving the homeless crisis and empathizes with people affected by it. At the same time, the church's property objectively is a poor location for a pod site to house the homeless, from the fact that development must occur to us residents strongly opposing the project there. Multiple things can be true at the same time. The county, including by a county employee's own admission during a recent meeting about this site, has done a bad job of communicating with residents and could have avoided such difficulties by selecting a more appropriate location for the pod. None of the information or studies that the county has shared on other pod villages provide any reassurance that our neighborhood will not be negatively impacted. They are not one-to-one comparisons. We all know that pod villages to house homeless guarantee disruption in the form of increased crime, noise, and social impact. It's disingenuous to pretend otherwise. We residents are legitimately concerned for the safety of current residents, including children and seniors who are among the most vulnerable, and for the hard work we've all put in to be able to afford to live in a quiet, safe, suburban, single-family home neighborhood. I encourage the county to find a location that will better serve the needs of homeless individuals and to avoid doing this work in a vacuum. Housing is only one piece of the puzzle to actually solve the houseless crisis, but there are other necessary services to provide that a single-family home neighborhood does not offer. Thank you.
Next, we have Maya. Maya, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead
Okay.
for a minute 45.
Hi, thank you. I live right around the corner from the proposed village. And when I heard about this, I decided to go and visit a few of the pod villages in Portland and the one here in the county that is currently up and running. During the day, I saw shopping carts surrounding the properties, people loitering, and makeshift tents. I was yelled at by one pod resident at the one on the TV highway village simply for looking at the site from a distance. I'm now concerned about the experience people here in Aloha are likely to have. Furthermore, if the proposed ordinance for regulation of public property with respect to camps and camping passes, we'll be surrounded by RVs and encampments within 500 feet from the village. There's already been 2 meetings with one more scheduled about this ordinance. My concerns include the safety of myself, my neighbors, as well as property values. And there's no shame in wanting to make sure that the investment I worked hard to achieve isn't negatively impacted, especially by something that does not have to happen at this location. The other pod villages are in commercial areas, from perimeters from neighborhoods, not in the middle of a neighborhood. A quiet family neighborhood is not the location for a village. Also, as many have stated, there's a bus stop, a school bus stop nearby, just at the corner there. And many of the other residents have very well mentioned their concerns, which are the same concerns I have. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, that concludes our half hour for this topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending it. I would encourage you to stick around and hear what we might say in just a few moments. All right, if you're following along on our agenda, we're going to go to our proclamations next. The first item is to, is there a presentation? Okay, yeah, the 75th anniversary of Women's Armed Services Integration Act. So our viewing audience and those in the audience might understand our time limit. But how long are we looking at this presentation and the next, do you know? 15 minutes or less, great. Yep, we want to. Huh? After, yeah, we'll do a picture right afterwards if you want, yeah. Okay.
All right, well, good evening, Vice Chair Rogers, Board of County Commissioners. My name is Mira Samantha. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. We are so delighted to be here before you this evening to present our proclamation. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Vicki Horn, who is our Veteran Services Supervisor with our Disability, Aging, and Veteran Services Division within Health and Human Services. She'll go ahead and introduce the rest of the presenters. There's a brief presentation, the proclamation reading, and then there will be an opportunity for a photo afterwards if you so choose.
Good evening. Thank you, Vice Chair Rogers and the board. I'm pleased to be sitting up here, honored to be sitting up here with fellow veterans, and I'd like them to just introduce themselves and tell you the time period they served. I am a United States Marine Corps veteran who served from 1989 to 1994.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Bradley. I am a retired Marine Corps officer. I served from 1990 to 2013, and I am currently the Women Veterans Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs.
My name is Carol Roberts. I'm a retired Master Sergeant from the Air Force. I served from 1968 to 1993. I'm glad to be here.
I'm Cher Dewada. I am a U.S. Navy veteran, and I served from 1998 to 2006.
Go Navy. Yay.
Hey, come on.
We all need a ride sometimes.
Yeah.
My son-in-law is a Marine, and he tells me that all the time.
Thank you for protecting these Navy guys.
We are here today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Women in the Armed Services Integration Act, signed June 12, 1948 by President Truman. We are celebrating the brave women who paved the path for women serving today and the many changes that have occurred because of their tenacity and skill. Women have served since the American Revolution in a variety of roles and have formally been a part of the United States Armed Forces since the inception of the Army Nurse Corps in 1901. In 1948, Congress made women a permanent part of the military service, allowing them to serve in peacetime and giving them eligibility to the same benefits that their male counterparts received. Prior to the signing of this act, women veterans did not receive the same veterans benefits as their male counterparts. The Women in the Armed Services Integration Act in 1948 allowed women to serve as part of the regular armed services, but limited the proportion of women in the military to 2% of the enlisted forces and 10% of officers. This limit was repealed in 1967, the end of the conscription and the transition to an all-volunteer force in 1973 marked a dramatic increase in the opportunities available for women to serve in the military. Women played an important part, and I've listed some of the numbers served and the casualties from specific wartime periods on our slides. They played an important part in staffing hospitals during the Civil War. This blazed the trail for them to be recruited when shortages occurred during the Spanish War, and the women were called to serve on the typhoid hospital ship Freedom. And this led to the establishment of the Army's and Navy's Nurses Corps. During World War I, 21,480 Army nurses and 2,000 Navy nurses served. The nurse corps were attached to the regular Army and Navy, but in an auxiliary fashion. Again, they did not have the same rights as rank and veterans benefits as their male counterparts. Recruit shortages had led the director of the Navy to take advantage of some wording or lack of wording in the law. Yeoman recruits were to be any citizens, and foreseeing shortages in World War I, he began to enlist women into the reserve status, and when war was declared, they were quickly activated. During World War I, 12,000 yeomen, 305 Marines, and 200 Army Single Corps women served. They were quickly deactivated as soon as the war was over. World War II saw additional needs in numbers with 4,000 women serving, and with the passing of the Integration Act, women were allowed to continue to serve when peace was achieved. However, they were limited to the 2% of the combined armed forces, a restriction that was not lifted until Vietnam. The post numbers that are listed up above are from September 2001 to 2015. Current demographics show that women make up about 17.3% of the armed forces and about 21.4% of the National Guard. And this is the fastest growing demographic group in the armed forces. There are some significant dates. One is November 3rd, 1989. That's the day I graduated from boot camp. I think I got a pointer here. Do I have a pointer? Well, I'm the 1, 2, 3, third person on this side. So, haven't changed. It lists the dates of the Nurses Corps for the Army and Navy, when the Navy opened enlistment to women prior to World War I in 1917, 1942, the Women's Army Auxiliary, 1942, the Navy also added women to the Reserve Forces. Interestingly enough, in 1943, the Army changed them to the Women's Army Corps because as the auxiliary, they weren't being paid as much as the other branches, so women weren't enlisting in them. So they changed it to get the same numbers. In 1973 is when they removed the 2% restriction and open command post for female service members. That's an important part for female officers because you can't be promoted without a command post. Women deployed in support of the Persian Gulf War in 1990. In 92, the Defense Authorization Act repealed some of the combat exclusions. In 94, women were allowed to serve on ships. In 2011, officers could serve on submarines. And then in 2013, a great day for women veterans, the Secretary of Defense announced the rescission of the 1994 direct combat definition, basically opening all military occupations for women, and we were allowed to serve along with men. I appreciate the women who came before my time in service and respect the women who continue to serve. This past weekend, I had an opportunity to attend the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs Women's Veteran Conference, and it's an honor to be counted among them. Jessica?
Good evening again. Thank you for having us here. Many women who have served in the military do not identify as veterans. While we were the most visible in uniform, we are mostly invisible out of uniform. In 2017, Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, in partnership with Portland State University, created the I Am Not Invisible campaign. It is a gorgeous photo exhibit featuring 22 Oregon women veterans. Its aim was to increase awareness of issues specific to women veterans. This campaign was part of an exhibit that traveled across Oregon. It traveled nationally to Washington, D.C., and was hosted there at the United States Capitol. It has also been replicated by numerous states' veterans agencies, including the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. As depicted in this wonderful image up here, this I Am Not Invisible campaign has really taken a life of its own, and in just a matter of a few years. And the exhibit was awarded here in Oregon the Pillars of Excellence Award from the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs in 2021. It is alive and well and continues to be an ongoing mobile physical exhibit that can be hosted by organizations, and it's also virtually represented on our Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs website. So I encourage everyone to go on to the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs website and pull up our own I Am Not Invisible exhibit. There's stories that go with it, and it's an impressive way to remember our women veterans. Thank you.
I also want to shine a light on some of the work we do over at Dave's. We help all veterans, of course, apply for their federal veterans benefits, including compensation, pension, and health care. But recently, we've been doing some extra outreach for women that served in the armed forces. And this picture is a group of women veterans that have got together, and we've filmed a 4-part series called Honor and Service, Women in the Military. It'll air Thursday at 7 p.m. starting June 8th, 2023. It'll air 4 consecutive Thursdays. You might notice in that picture that there's one up there that looks a little different than the rest of us. That's Paul Riggs. He's a program specialist at Dave's. He's been our executive producer, our editor, our filmographer, our exceptional facilitator throughout the experience, and we appreciate his kindness and his empathy throughout the process. And with that, I'd like to let Carol and Sherry read the proclamation.
Do you want to read the top part? The proclamation?
Oh, I can. Proclamation, Board of Commissioners for Washington County, 75th anniversary of the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, June 12th, 2023.
Whereas women have played a role in the United States military conflicts since the American Revolution, and whereas women are the fastest growing group of veterans, and whereas there are more than 2 million women veterans with approximately 2,800 residing in Washington County, and whereas women veterans are trailblazers in an environment historically dominated by men and face unique challenges both in and after service, and whereas in 1970, women's roles in the military expanded, finally allowing them to rise to command roles in non-combat units, and
whereas in 2013, women achieved full status in the military when they were granted the right to serve in direct ground combat roles, and whereas women serve besides men in both combat and non-combat roles in defense of our nation, and whereas public awareness about the contributions made by women in the armed forces promotes acceptance and understanding, and whereas Disability, Aging, and Veteran Services has served 734 women veterans by connecting them to their veteran benefits and is committed to serving all veterans and recognizing their shared history of service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 23rd day of May 2023, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim June 12, 2023 as the 75th anniversary of Women in the Armed Services Integration Act, which allowed women to serve as regular and permanent members of the armed forces in the Navy, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard, and encourages all residents to celebrate the day women were recognized as being an essential part of our armed forces.
So much for your presentation and reading the proclamation. We need a motion.
Thank you very much.
We should have asked if there was women in the veterans in the county.
We just asked if we couldn't have a couple of comments before we have the motion on the proclamation. Sorry for all of you waiting so long. We've had a regular agenda. We didn't know how many would show up tonight, but please, Mr. Treese.
I will only take a second. I just want to say thank you so much for your service, but also thank you for being here. My mother served in the Royal Air Force in World War II and met my father, who was a captain in the Army in England. And I just want you to know that I see her face reflected in all four of you. Thank you so much.
We do need a motion and a second then.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and second. All in favor, raise your right hand proudly. All right. I understand we're going to have a photo op, a real quick one, and then we'll move on. Is that good?
I really appreciate the I'm Not Invisible campaign, because it's just so important that you do that and you promote this, and we need to all be aware of what it is that we're all together on this. So thank you very much.
And Commissioner Willie, if you don't know, is also a veteran.
Are there any other women veterans in the audience?
All right. Go Navy. Go Navy. Go Air Say hoorah. All right.
Okay, our next proclamation, and we have a presentation, thank you, I'm glad we do, is to the LGBTQ plus Pride Month proclamations.
Patricia.
Yep.
Good evening, and Kevin, are you promoting our other co-presenters? We should be joined shortly by Lee Van Duzer from the Law Library, Ricardo Palazuelos, and Jacob Rosales. Ricardo from Health and Human Services and Jacob from Housing. Okay. Did we lose Lee? Oh.
I'm here. Is my video upside down
It
for
looks
everyone
like
else?
you're upside down, Lee.
Yes, it is.
We're trying to
I'm
figure out
not
how you
really,
did
I
that,
swear.
Lee, so,
Good trick.
you know, yeah.
Good trick, we would like to do that.
Only your face is upside down, the logo is perfect, so, you know.
Yeah, he might be, yeah.
It's a yoga moment for, okay, well,
I'm here. I'll just stop my video.
okay, thank you. Well, good evening, Vice Chair Rogers and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Latricia Tillman. I'm pleased to serve as your Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, especially in the moments when we stand together in support. I'm pleased to offer a few introductory remarks on our cultural heritage celebrations before I turn it over to Lee, Jacob, and Ricardo from the Washington County Pride Month Planning Committee to read the proclamation. So Washington County Cultural Heritage celebrations and resource pages are an important starting point for our collective organizational engagement and learning about equity, diversity, and inclusion. Central to bringing the board's commitment to centering equity and community voices is deepening our understanding of the many diverse communities that are a part of Washington County and our employee community. The Pride Month celebration we will enjoy this in June has been planned and organized, is being planned and organized by dozens of staff who volunteer to support our learning in addition to their official work in participation with our partners at Clean Water Services. Members of this group of passionate and dedicated staff have been leading our Pride Month celebrations since 2019, so predating the equity resolution. The cultural celebrations offer an opportunity to enter into relationship with staff and community who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, and many other identities in this community to build trust and to deepen our understanding of these diverse and growing communities in Washington County. These celebrations also create an opportunity to learn about historic and present oppression of the LGBTQ+ community and the community's resilience in the face of oppression, so that we can reflect on whether or not our current policies and sentiments support the well-being of the LGBTQ+ community and address historic exclusion. The Heritage Month committees are thoughtful about the learning opportunities they share with our Washington County community and are always interested in learning more. So we encourage people who may be curious about what is or is not presented or the policy implications of what is shared this month to reach out to us at the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, or to open a dialogue with their colleagues or the planning committee members. I want to thank all the members of the committee who met over the past few weeks under the leadership of Committee Chair Highland Edelman in Environmental Health and formerly of the Office of Equity. The commitment that they make to increasing the visibility and acceptance of members of this community in our workforce and the community at large is invaluable. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ricardo Palazuelos, Jacob Rosales, and Lee Van Duzer of the Pride Month Planning Committee to read this year's proclamation.
Thank you, Latricia. Whereas our country was founded on the principle of equal rights for all people, but the fulfillment of this promise has been too long in coming for many Americans, including those who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, asexual, and two-spirit plus people, and
whereas an historic turning point in the movement toward equal rights for LGBTQ plus people occurred on June 28, 1969, at the Stonewall Inn in New York City, when LGBTQ plus community members rose up and fought back against brutal police raids and discriminatory criminal laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And as whereas the first LGBTQ plus Pride Parade took place over 1 year after the Stonewall riots on June 28, 1970, to commemorate the events at Stonewall, launching what would become an annual nationwide tradition of Pride celebrations every year since then. And
whereas we remember that the uprising at Stonewall was led by people of color and Black and Latinx trans members of the LGBTQ plus community, and that past and present battles for racial and LGBTQ plus justice in this country were built on the shoulders of courageous change makers like Jose Sarria, Maxine Perkins, Donna Burkett, Manonia Evans, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, as well as many others. And
whereas, though the struggle for federal rights and protections for LGBTQ plus people persists, on June 11, 1999, Pride Month was federally recognized for the first time, commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. And whereas, on June 24, 2016, the Stonewall Inn was designated as a national monument, forever preserving this historic site where the modern LGBTQ plus civil rights movement began. And
whereas in our country's continuing struggle to seek justice for Black lives, our current Pride Month celebrations underscore the critical role that intersectionality plays in the fight for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning justice. And
whereas even with continued attempts at the local, state, and federal levels to enact oppressive legislation that threatens the rights, safety, and very lives of LGBTQ plus people, their struggle for dignity and equality is reflected in their tireless dedication to forge a more inclusive society, along with support from community advocates and allies. And whereas the great diversity, invaluable contributions to our communities, and enduring activism of the LGBTQ plus community can never be canceled or forgotten. And
whereas
love
wins. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 23rd day of May 2023, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim June 2023 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month, and urge all community residents to eliminate discrimination and injustice wherever they exist, to celebrate the lives of our LGBTQ plus neighbors and friends, and to work together to create a more inclusive society that values all people, no matter who they are and who they love, extending the promise of our country to all people. Latricia.
Concluded?
That's concluded.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
thank you. We turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And thank you to our presenters. Tricia's the only one in the audience. Everybody else is on camera, but we see you. Other than the person who was upside down, we don't see you anymore. But that, yeah. So we have a proclamation before us. We need a motion and a second, please.
So moved. And I just wanted to say to our employees and to our residents that we celebrate with you this month and beyond. And I just wanted to share that. Growing up, I lived in Portland, Oregon, and one of the things I enjoyed my younger years when I lived there was the parade or the celebration. So June is my favorite because of that event growing up. So I just wanted to share. I celebrate with you, and happy Pride Month in June.
I'd like to second what Nafisa said and also the motion, but also I want to extend my appreciation for those who read the proclamation this evening, who are employees that have helped us gain more and more knowledge about all members of our community, and thank you for your work here at the county and throughout our community. We are better for all of you.
We have had a motion, we have had a second. All in favor, raise your right hand, please. I don't see any opposed, so thank you. The proclamation's been read and adopted.
Thank you.
All right. We have a couple more items before we get back to the item that we had all the testimony on. The first one is appointment of a Northwest Act citizen at large position. We have a recommendation, and we need a motion to approve that individual. Don Aldermont.
I would make a motion to approve that. I want to make sure Stephen Roberts didn't need to make and Aaron Wardell did not need to make. Okay, all right, motion to approve.
Second.
And a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand again. Okay, none opposed. It is approved. The next item is to accept the Salary Commission report for Chair and Commissioner salaries. This is an annual event, and we simply accept it. It's nothing we set. It's an independent body, and so unless we need something beyond that, I would simply just take and have a motion.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, we do have a presentation from the Chair and Vice Chair of the Salary Commission for you tonight.
Okay.
They're joining us online.
All right. Sorry.
And I'm going to go ahead and get it started. Vice Chair Rogers, Commissioner Woolley, Commissioner Fye, Commissioner Treese. I'm one of the assistant county administrators. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank the co-chairs of the Salary Commission, the Chair Brianna and Vice Chair Heike for their work, and also the members Victor Mena and Monica Santoya, who have been working diligently. Also want to recognize the staff that supported this effort, and they include Tom Carr, Kevin Moss, and from the auditor's office, Sherry Kirk. Before the chair and vice chair provide their presentation, Tom Carr will be providing some context to just sort of help everyone get grounded on the work and the report. So I will turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, David. As you all know, the Salary Commission was put into the charter by an initiative from the people put on by this board to change the charter to create an independent commission for the setting of salaries. The rationale, as you all know, is to encourage broader diversity on representative bodies. This goes back to the English Parliament in the 19th century when they were first paid. If you only have people who can afford to serve for free, you only have a single type of person. So the idea is that particularly in light of recent news, having the ability to have an independent group, professionals, and as David said, I was honored to work with this group. They are HR professionals who did a very diligent job, and I was very impressed with the work that they did. The charter says that they set your salary. It's not a recommendation, as Vice Chair Rogers noted. It's just a report that you are required to set, and they set the salary. That's my statement. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, why don't we turn to our two guests tonight over online, and please make some comments.
All right, good afternoon or good evening. I'm Brianna Ekandam, and I've had the pleasure to serve as the chair for the commission, and just lots of gratitude as expressed for the work that's contributed to this. So I will be sharing a bit about our recommendation, but I'd first like to pass it over to Heike to talk about our comparator data that contributed to the report.
Thank you, Brianna, and good evening, everyone. My name is Heike Kirkendall-Baker, and like Brianna said, I am the vice chair for the committee. The Salary Commission conducted research and considered several factors for making our recommendation. The primary factors included a review of the external comparators to establish an understanding of the market. So we used the external to evaluate the market. And then we did a review of the internal comparators to understand the internal compensation philosophy. And then we reviewed the responsibilities and time commitments required of the county commissioners. And we obtained that through testimony from several county commissioners. So starting first with the external comparators, we selected 12 counties in Oregon and in Washington of similar population, size, and total budget. We then assessed several major factors for those external comparators, including the types of services offered, the size and makeup of the board, direct and indirect staff, and other distinguishing factors. We also assessed the total compensation for each of the external commissioners, including base pay, retirement contributions, additional pay, deferred compensation, and the full and part-time status of the commissioners. Our findings are available in the external comparator analysis document. As to the internal comparators, we assessed several major factors for the exempt staff positions within Washington County, including the scope of responsibility and the impact of the position, the complexity of the role, and the position level within the organization. Unfortunately, we were unable to identify specific positions that were comparable to the roles of the county commissioners, so we could not align the salaries. With the current restructure within Washington County, we also decided not to link the county commissioner's salaries to any internal exempt staff positions due to potential additional changes that may, in responsibility or salaries that may occur within the next 2 years. For all of these reasons, we use the average minimum salary range for exempt staff positions, and they're all chief level positions. And we use those minimum salary, the average of the minimum salary range to ensure that the market comparisons that we were using did not create any internal inequities. And finally, our findings are available in the internal comparator analysis document. Brianna?
Thank you so much, Heike. I appreciate the detail around that. So to present the final recommendation from the commission, we presented this information in a two-part increase, one being for this year and the other being for the next year. We really took under consideration the current budget constraints for the county, and we're optimistic that next year that there would be some improvement. So we did it in two parts, and we also broke it up by a 2% salary increase and a 2% COLA increase for each position. So you'll find in the report that we'll take the county commissioner role to $124,982.08. And that would be in the first year, and then it would go up 2% and 2%, so a total of 4%. And then the board chair role is a 10% difference from the commissioner role, and her new salary, or the chair position salary, would be $137,480.29. So we like to share this information with you as part of our final report. As Heike said, there are more details that went into the comparator data, and we just thank you for honoring us with the opportunity to do this review and partner with the county and all the staff that help support the work. And that concludes our report.
All right, thank you very much for your report. we have a action item, which is simply to accept the report if we're so inclined.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, go ahead.
I would just like to thank the Salary Commission for the work that you have done, and I appreciate the fact that you do this as volunteers and you bring your professional expertise to the tables, and I know how diligent you are, and I appreciate it, and I know that the rest of the commission does as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has nothing to do with this particular proclamation, but several of the commissioners have declined any increase due to the economic conditions the county is in. So I just throw that out. All right, all in favor, raise their right hand, please. Accepting the report. Any? Yep, I see them all. So it is approved. Thank you very much. I feel badly having all these people sit. We want to march through, or do we want to take them next? Keep going? All right. The next one is a action item, American Rescue Plan, ARPA 2326 projects approval.
Good evening, Vice Chair Rogers and Commissioners. I'm Rachel Fuller, an Assistant County Administrator, and I'm joined by Dorian Russell, the ARPA Program Coordinator. The purpose of the presentation is to present the ARPA 2023-26 Framework and Work Plan. The work plan outlines the highest priority projects for the remaining ARPA funds and provides a description of each project for clarity for the board and the community. As a reminder, on April 18th, your board approved the ARPA framework at the investment area level. And with that, I will turn it over to Dorian to give the presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. Again, for the record, my name is Dorian Russell, they, them pronouns, ARPA Program Manager. Excited to be here today to provide the project level detail on your ARPA framework. Once again, the purpose for tonight is a follow-up, all of the different projects that fall within those overarching investment areas that your board adopted in April. The action item for this evening for your board to consider would be to adopt the list of projects that are outlined within each of your investment areas. The investment areas that you approved in April are listed here. They include workforce development, small business support, broadband, public health mandates, effective ARPA management, revenue replacement, congregate facilities projects, namely HVAC, and strategic planning. A quick note before we get into each of the projects. Some of the next steps and anticipated outcomes that you can expect include ensuring compliance with ongoing public health related mandates. I do want to acknowledge that we're moving forward with a very flexible plan that you may consider reallocations as conditions change. That means that some ARPA projects that are listed inside of the work plan might cease before spending out the entire project funding allocation. If your board decides to make this decision, I will note that some ARPA projects may require some ramp down periods from 30 to 90 days for operational activities, including ending contracts and positions, followed by up to 180 days of administrative activities. And part of this includes that 6-month rotation where your board will consider making reallocations as conditions change. And then secondly, we look forward to providing you precise year-end obligation values, as well as better projections when it comes to our public health mandates at a later date. So you will not see project level values in the report. For your approval today, the proposed projects underneath workforce development, those projects include childcare workforce development, behavioral health workforce development, and within the Economic Development Office, a general workforce development program. In addition, a small business support program, the continuation of the broadband investment strategy work, and as of today, underneath public health, that includes case investigation, outbreak response, vaccination, and administration. Underneath your investment area for effective ARPA management, this includes program administration, communication, and data equity. Revenue replacement includes a project in organizational resilience. Your congregate facilities projects include the Law Enforcement Center's HVAC, the Harkins House HVAC, the Community Corrections Center HVAC and controls replacement, and Justice Services Building HVAC and controls replacement. Within your strategic planning investment area, the two projects that we have outlined for you include the county strategic plan and a service level assessment. In terms of next steps for your board's continued discussion, we look forward to providing you project level budgets considering the changing COVID-19 landscape and year-end trends. We're going to continue engaging with community stakeholders on strategies within each of these projects. And we're going to continue to review mandates and project our progress on a 6-month rotation for your board to consider potential ARPA funding reallocations as we move forward. A note on ongoing engagement. Throughout the remaining ARPA period, staff are going to collaborate with community on the design and implementation of each of the projects within this work plan. Some examples of what this might look like include designing equitable strategies within the Small Business Development Program, also consulting on supplier diversity goals for each of your HVAC projects. And finally, the action item for your consideration this evening is to adopt the project lists that are outlined within each of your already adopted investment areas.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Vice Chair Rogers, just for clarification for the audience as well, these allocations, when we get to that point, we must be committed to these allocations by December of 2024, and we have until December of 2026 to spend that money as designated by the end of 24. So we still have some work to do on this, and I really appreciate Rachel and Dorian for your work and continuation on this. This has been a challenge, and it will continue to be that, but thank you very much for your work.
Yeah, I do have a comment. Dorian and Rachel, great presentation. Good work on this ARPA process and ARPA allocations. I hear what you're balancing in the situation. I will not be supporting this action item tonight solely because I presented a reasonable amendment to the ARPA allocations. The county, this isn't a new county. In 1918, the flu pandemic, this county survived. People have died. Businesses have gone out of businesses, and I felt like my amendment was to invest into the community and the businesses that have been impacted, the revenue replacement. I specifically called it out, community resilience, and got pivoted to organizational resilience. And we all know what that entails. And I think that it's not the best way, and it's not the responsible way of spending $11.7 million. I think the community needs us to rescue them, but I understand the direction we're heading, and I'm a lone vote in that, and that's the reason why I will be voting no on this action. Does not reflect the good work you put in. It's just a policy level disagreement. I appreciate all the work you've done. I think this revenue replacement funding could have been really pivoted to invest in businesses and people. However, we're investing it into the system, and for that I will be voting for no.
All right, thank you.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any additional comments? I would simply say, Commissioner Fry, that I respect your comments. It's, we are in a little different position. I think that the state of our various buildings and what we do to carry on business in the future, it's imperative that we make certain that they're in good stead. And so there is, what?
As soon as you're done.
All right, do you want to make a comment? There is nothing in that resolution that's allocating dollars. It seems fairly flexible, and so I will support the motion. Do you want to?
Yeah, and just to emphasize, the reason I said that this money has to be dedicated specifically by the end of '24, that means we have about 18 months yet to design that. So Commissioner Fye, don't give up hope. There may be other opportunities that we have as we move ahead, and you're going to see that as we move ahead to begin designated money to these, and if there's other monies that we can redesignate. So we hear you. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Just a point of clarification to your comment, Commissioner Rogers. My amendment was supporting the critical care facilities and the needs of that. My amendments were specific to the revenue replacement, which is about $11.7 million, where we now are investing organizational resilience, where I was asking to invest in community resilience to our business community and to our communities out there. This is ARPA funds, which means is COVID-related funds, and people need to come out stronger, or if anything, come out the way they were before the pandemic started. But that's not where we're heading. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I'm not, we're not going to go back and forth, but I'm not so certain we're not heading that way, because as you recall, at the budget time, I said if there are additional opportunities, let's take them, and that hopefully we'll continue to press on those edges and see what's left in there, and so I'm hopeful that'll occur. With that, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand, please. There's 3 and 1 no vote. All right, passes 3-1. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right, for all of you who have braved it tonight with us, we're going back to what we now call F3, which is the 5th item, which is the approve the bid award and authorize execution of contract for the supply and construction of palletized shelters. Do you all want to make comments? Because I know I have them as well.
I'd like to request that Jess Larson come back up for a few questions.
Oh, I didn't see her. I thought she maybe had escaped out. Good. Yeah, perfect. Did you want to go first? No? Yeah, up to you. I think Commissioner Treese has a couple comments. Why don't we just work down, and then I'll have my comments, and maybe Commissioner Willie and Commissioner Fye.
So, Ms. Larson, thank you for your presentation earlier. I appreciate it. My understanding is that this evening, what we are voting on is the purchase of the palletized individual shelter beds that can be used anywhere. Is that correct, first of all?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner. The purchase of these pod shelters are to acquire critical infrastructure needed to provide shelter capacity at a variety of locations we anticipate over the life cycle of the pods.
And so it's also my understanding that we are not voting on where those pods will be placed.
That is also correct, Commissioner. We use the shelter siting community guidelines as a mechanism for making the decision for siting, and we also have state legislation that allows for the super siting of shelter because of the housing emergency we have. So there isn't an action needed by the board in order to determine a location beyond the action the board has already taken with the shelter siting guidelines.
And can you tell me what the timeline that you anticipate in relationship to placing those pods?
Yes, currently we are, I would anticipate on track programmatically with the acquisition of the pods, the development of the contract and programming work with the provider Open Door, the partnership and contract with the faith community, Aloha Methodist, and also the community engagement work towards a Good Neighbor agreement. All of those efforts are underway simultaneously, on track to potentially open a program by late summer is our current estimation, but this is an evolving timeline We work as urgently as possible because of the need in our community, but with respect to all of those various bodies of work needing to be resolved and attended to.
Thank you.
My comments are these, and somewhat for the audience as well. There's 5 commissioners, one at large, that's the county chair, she's not here. The other 4 of us are all by district, and so 3 of us don't live in your area. We come from other parts of the county, and I was very interested in the testimony. I'm compelled to say that we need to maybe step back and look at this. You mentioned, Jess, and rightly so, that you don't need our approval, and that's part of the problem. If we buy these shelters, they're gonna cost money. You haven't heard the rest. You haven't heard the rest. I'm for the shelters. I think we need to put shelters in places for folks who have a homeless situation, but putting them in areas where there's no transit, areas where there's no sidewalks, areas in which you're in the middle of a neighborhood, it troubles me. It's just me. So I'm troubled by all that. I'm also troubled by the fact that churches, in my time here on the board, we've allowed many churches to go in. And this isn't you, I'm just talking, between us. Allowed churches never thinking that they would expand their purpose other than their main mission, and that wasn't to site homes on their sites. I mean, that was never the idea, at least in my mind back when. So for my fellow board members, if I had, and I have 1 vote, my druther is to say, let's slow down, let's take a look and listen, and look and see if there are alternative sites. If this is the only one, let's make the case for this one. I know in my own areas, I'm in Tigard. We have many facilities all around my office. We have a lot of facilities, and so these are not without careful analysis. The people in those facilities are in need, and so I'm compassionate towards that. But I also think that we need to be compassionate with the people who have made their home, their investments there, and we can't just say because we know better. I mean, I think we have to listen. So I'm concerned. That's where I'm at tonight.
So thank you, Commissioner Treese, for clarifying the fact that if we approve the acquisition of these pods, we are not approving where they go. It's kind of like we're buying inventory, and that's where we are right now. What I did hear from each one of you tonight is that we have not had enough community involvement in this, and I think we will commit that we will do that, and how that we go about doing that remains to be seen, but this isn't the first opportunity we've had. Remember, we are doing the same thing in a neighborhood in Forest Grove on Elm Street, and that is also causing some issues. So I think there needs to be some real clear definition of what exactly it is that we're doing. What I heard tonight was that low barrier is difficult to put into neighborhoods. I completely agree with you on that. Background checks. Can the church actually authorize this? Is this a land use question? A good neighbor agreement is going to be critical. And a site plan so that every one of you see what this looks like before it's built and put into your backyard. So from my standpoint, these are things that we absolutely have to commit to you, because we know we can't be tone deaf in this. But it's also very, very important that you learn about time, place, and manner. This is an opportunity that we have to really put some definition and boundaries on our homeless shelters, but we have to have a place for them to go. So that's designed by the court system. We're going to comply with that, but these things all work in conjunction with each other. But it is important that we have a lot of community involvement and we hear your concerns, and we do our absolute very best to meet those concerns. So thank you for being here tonight.
I won't repeat. I echo what Commissioner Willie said, and I appreciate the questions Commissioner Trees asked. I have a few questions for you, Jess. Perhaps maybe one that's around the contract, the good neighbor agreement, the community engagement plan. Talk us through first, maybe taking an even step back with my own question and say, where are you in this process? Because I've had meetings with community members over the weekend, and it seems that is a train that's left the station, and people are playing catch up here. And even that alone, the fact, it's making people nervous because you don't know what you don't know. And when we're talking about particular issue that's around safety and the perception of who's homeless, the idea of not in my backyard, it just sort of adds on to it. So perhaps you tell us, where are you in this process? I think the action in front of us today is separate than the issue that a lot of people here are concerned. The county can purchase pallets, we can approve it, it can go somewhere. But I think that if people are here concerned about the ALOA, what I've heard is, listen to me, hear my concerns. So tell us where you are, and then when can we see the contracts? When, the good neighbors. What is the community engagement plan to actually talk to people? And then what are the mitigation strategies that you're entertaining? Because I happen to believe a lot of the concerns community members have, including myself, are mitigatable, but we need to know your strategy so that we can know if it will work for me, for my own safety concerns. As you know, I've said it many times, I don't believe people should be using the streets as a waiting room for permanent housing. And I think shelter housing is an opportunity to shelter people in a more respectful and a dignified way. So I'm a champion of providing these types of opportunities for people who are homeless, and especially veterans. I was vocal about this. Create a space for veterans to shelter instead of the streets. So there's a lot. I know you have game plan, but it's not a transparent game plan. So tell us what your plan is, and we'll go from there. We won't keep you all night.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the question. And I'm sorry, I'm not prepared with a more complete presentation for you about this, but grateful for the opportunity to discuss and happy to bring back further information for the board's further consideration as needed. So where are we right now in this process? That's an excellent question. The way we go about identifying locations for shelters was a community engagement process that we convened through broad community discussions, conversations with our board, other jurisdictions, surveys, feedback sessions, and a document that is live on our website, publicly available, and has been reviewed and approved by the board, called the Shelter Siting Community Equitable Siting Shelter Guidelines document, I believe. And this is a tool to determine what kind of sites are suitable for shelter. Essentially, it's very challenging to identify any available land for purchase, lease, or owners willing to use their property for shelter. So there isn't a wide list of available options that we narrow down and we pick the best from. It is more a matter of, is there anything at all that meets these minimum standards of expectation around siting shelter? And that is the process for now. That is now the process, thanks to that document and that community work, of how we go about identifying suitable sites. There is state legislation that allows for the use of shelter without going through the standard land use process. So that is the mechanism for the decision making for land use that is currently allowing the consideration of this church property for a temporary shelter program. And I do want to stress that we are only looking at using these pod villages as temporary programs lasting no longer than 2 years, as one of the constituents testified.
Wait a sec. Wait a minute, let her talk.
And it also relates, oftentimes the siting of shelters also often relates to the siting of permanent future affordable housing, the development of a permanent affordable housing site. And there is other state enabling legislation that encourages faith communities to be able to use their property for the development of affordable housing, something that the church is also considering. Unrelated to the conversation directly tonight, but it is all part of the larger strategy for how housing and shelter is created to meet the unmet needs in our community. So where are we in the process? We have taken those steps, identified that this meets the needs of our shelter siting agreement, identified that the faith community is interested in partnering, it meets our shelter programming needs, and now we're ready to move into that community engagement process while the property is prepared for the future use as a shelter. And that is something that was clearly directed by your board, that the engagement process is not a matter of determining if a site is suitable. It is a matter of determining how to go about preparing for a program in a way that is responsive to community concerns and mitigates those concerns through a good neighbor agreement. So many of the concerns that have been raised tonight are exactly the content of the work of this community engagement process. The staff will be preparing to engage the neighbors around and working to mitigate those concerns through the Good Neighbor Agreement and through the contract with the service provider, as well as the ongoing partnership between the county and the faith community and the neighbors. That is the tool, the Good Neighbor Agreement, that contract serves, is that relational document of how we will conduct business together, communicate together, and mitigate concerns. These things might include the design of the site, for example. That is something that we want to get community feedback on to make sure there's considerations for how the site is officially designed to provide the programming. Things like the type of fencing that's used is an example of something that will come out through that Good Neighbor Agreement and community engagement feedback. So again, many of the concerns raised tonight are exactly the purpose and part of the process of that co-creating that Good Neighbor Agreement with the community. We've had one community engagement session, and we conducted this more like a listening session to hear the concerns. The next session, scheduled for June 15th, is going to be designed more as a working stations discussion where we can address concerns about public safety over here, address concerns about the operations of the program at this station, address concerns about communication with the church and neighbors over at this station, for example. And we will continue to progress through community engagement as needed to work constructively towards creating a Good Neighbor Agreement that will ultimately be the tool, again, used between the community, the faith community, and the county and the service provider organization. And I do want to provide one more detail. There is a bus stop right at the location. There's
Go ahead, please.
There is concern about the sidewalks. That is something that I think we want to work through in that community engagement process. So I hope that is helpful. I'm happy to take any further questions that all of that might have raised.
Were you going to ask a question?
I'm just going to say, is the June 15th meeting a public meeting, and where's it going to be held at?
It's June 5th.
Fifth, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
June 5th.
And I don't have the time. I'm so sorry. Someone here.
For June 5th.
And yes, we will make sure
not
it's
a secret
available.
anymore.
I know that it,
Yeah, well, yeah, and we can share, I can share it with everyone that I have emailed, but I had a follow-up question, and that is, I won't ask any of the land use. I think Mary brought it up, the concern about the fence. That's land use, we'll take that offline, but the contract hasn't been signed, is that correct?
the contract with the service provider, that is correct. I believe we are still working on finalizing the details there. And then I also heard mention of the good neighbor agreement. And right, so that is something that hasn't even been drafted yet because that's part of that co-creating process. But the contract with the service provider, we have shelters of this style already under operation, so it will mirror the service agreement that we already use for similar shelter programs.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to provide one last comment, Vice Chair Rogers, and that is, I live in Aloha myself, Jess. Work with us. I think this is a community where all my children were born. This is a community where I belong. This is where I feel safe, and this is where my heart is. So work with us. I think you've heard similar concerns when the Aloha Inn, which is now called the Hardwood Commons, was going in. But if we don't know what's coming, and if we can't provide inputs, and I say we because since I live also I'm impacted, I think it creates a fear that's unnecessary. I will be supporting this action item in front of us tonight, but that doesn't mean that it's a green light to not listen to the community and not facilitate an opportunity to design this accountability mechanism that if things got out of, who do we hold accountable? Where are the chain of commands when it comes to this shelter? And how do we, for sure, what are some comforting points of clarification that we can provide and incorporate into the contract that we can come back and hold accountable? And Marnie, I see you joining. Yes, and somebody, the background, I think there's points that we have to talk through.
Yes, I thank you, Commissioner Fye and Vice Chair. I was trying to get your attention because I just want to share that staff are absolutely following the board-approved process. They are going into community engagement. We are working to listen to. What I wanted to suggest is if the board would like to revisit the guidelines that were approved by the board, we're happy to bring those back. So that staff are following the guidelines, and if you want to revisit them, we are more than happy to bring them back to this board.
I don't think I have a problem with the board guidelines that we've approved, Marnie. I think the problem is that the community doesn't know what that is, and if there's a good neighbor agreement that we've got, which I'm sure we do because this isn't our first time around this, I'd like to make sure that's a public document so that the community can see that in anticipation of having that conversation. So I think we have adopted the process that we desire to have. We just want to make sure that there's full disclosure and transparency in all of this process. And I think what I have heard tonight is we're missing a couple of those steps, and community engagement certainly is one of them.
Thank you, and that's why I'm suggesting we may want to revisit the guidelines because the guidelines say that we do not do that engagement around where to site, but once that's been decided, then we start having conversations about good neighbor agreements. I'm just sharing the,
We can't
I'm
hear
just being transparent, and if we want to revisit that, and we want to have earlier community engagement, we're happy to revisit that with the board. That's all I'm sharing.
I think Commissioner Treese has a comment.
So I just want to make a couple more comments, and to my colleagues, thank you for being thoughtful about this. But I want to remind all of us that homelessness is the biggest issue that we're facing in our community, and I know that we are all aware of that. And when I say homelessness, it's homelessness and all of the issues that are a result of that situation. So I also believe that we have to be prepared to be able to activate when we can. And for me, the ordering of these shelter pods is the first step. So those have to be in our inventory. I am going to be voting yes tonight so that we are prepared. We can continue work with the community with the discussions around all the other pieces, but we need to have the inventory ready to be able to address what our ongoing issues are here.
Can you, did you have a comment? No. Wait a sec. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add? Either Jess or Marnie? Yeah.
I don't believe
All
so.
right.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I see your hand, but this isn't a public hearing. No, wait a minute, this isn't a public hearing, we extended the time. Let me make my final comments as well. I agree that indeed ordering shelters, it sounds like smart inventory control, but frankly, you don't order them if you don't have a place to put them. And the thing that bothers me is, no, wait a minute. The problem I have is not with anything staff's done. You've done good work. I don't question that at all. It's only, I think, and maybe I'm not in the same position as Commissioner Willey. I think I'll be alone up here tonight, and that's fine. I've been there before. It just doesn't seem like we've had a dialogue that's sufficient. And I know what's going to happen is it doesn't have to come back to us to cite. We have these rules, and I understand that. They're state rules, we adopt it. I understand that as well. But it just doesn't seem like the way we ought to be doing business in Washington County. And so I'll be voting no, and it's not because I don't respect my colleagues, and it's not because I'm reacting to the audience, it's because I just don't think we've had enough conversation on this. And if I had my druthers, we'd put it off for a few weeks and take a look at the site, get more information, and go forward. But that's not what's going to happen tonight. Anyway, with that.
So what's the lead time on this? How long does it take them to manufacture these pods?
Thank you, Commissioner. I can give you an estimate. I would need to confirm that, but I believe there are 6 to 8 weeks out. And then, of course, there's time to assemble and prepare the site once the pods are received. So I don't have the full project timeline in front of me. I'm sorry. I can work on getting that for you.
Okay, I heard late summer. So that's within the 2 to 3 month timeline. What I might suggest is when's the next meeting? We 3 weeks out, Tom?
June 13th, Commissioner Willey. June 13th.
June 13th.
June 13th, yeah.
I make a motion, we table this to June 13th.
Is there a second to that? I'll second it. Okay, I can tell we're going to be in an impasse, which is surprising to me tonight. Okay, so any other discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion to table this until June 13th? 2, all right? And then all who are opposed to that, there's 2 as well, right? All right. So we're at an impasse. What's the other motion? Yeah, the motion failed. What is there another motion to approve the action item?
I move to approve.
I second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the item. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise their hand. 2, all opposed? Fails. Okay. So, we need to wait. There's no, I don't see us coming to any conclusion this evening, and so we're going to be at June 13th. No matter
We should have probably asked that question before we delved into that deep pool there, Tom. Had we approved the table, it'd be June 13. We did not. We also did not approve the acquisition of these. Can it come back on June 13th?
Can be brought back on a motion to reconsider, yeah.
All right. It'll be June 13th.
Can I just say how much I appreciate Jess Larson? She came in at the last minute from another meeting and has been in a relatively hostile situation. She's great and does her job. A very hostile situation with a lot of rude people. Ms. Larson has done a great job here tonight.
Please, thank you, Tom. Yeah, I think the entire board, Jess, they appreciate the work that you guys are doing. It's a difficult, so thank you. Please, all right. So it's going to come back to June 13th, and that concludes this item for tonight. Thank you. All right, Kevin, now public, and for general knowledge, we're now going to our second public communication on items that aren't on the agenda or that we didn't allow time, so this would be other issues. Are there other issues that are?
Yes, so we'll start with anyone in the room have any other comments on any other county-related business for up to 5 minutes?
Not this one, yeah.
Not relating to this topic the board discussed. Not seeing anyone, so we'll move to online. Would anyone online like to provide any comment on any other county-related topic for up to 5 minutes? So we have Virginia Bruce. Virginia, can you hear us?
I'm unmuted now, so maybe you can hear me too.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. I had planned to make a comment, not even knowing about this Aloha situation, but I feel like it underscores the comment I'm about to make, which is I want to thank the board for their comments at the work session when you were presented with OEICE's mandate for you to approve their program about what to do with the future of CCI and CPO, and especially to Catherine Harrington, who's not here, who basically said, whoa, and this situation tonight, and I'm speaking for myself as a member of CPO1 and not in any official capacity. This situation tonight underscores the need for CPOs. And I certainly hope that they plan to take this question to the CPO, to CPO 6, which I believe represents that area. And all of you folks there at this meeting, if you're not signed up to get information from your CPO, do it now, because this is what CPOs are supposed to do. I just heard a rumor, and it would be nice if anyone there can confirm, that Latricia Tillman is resigning as the director of OEICE. Can anyone speak to that?
That's correct.
And that's the sum of my content.
It's not a rumor. She has decided to move on to other things. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else, Kevin?
Any other persons online wish to provide comment for up to 5 minutes? Give you just last moment to utilize the raise hand function.
On a different topic than the Aloha?
Yes. Not seeing any additional hands. Vice Chair Rogers.
We've got one person over here, and it's not the Aloha topic.
Blocked by the side.
Again, name for the record, please.
I'm John Woods. I ran for state representative, and I had to deal with this homeless thing in my campaign. I also worked with and for Sunrise Church at their cold weather shelter. From what I see, there is nothing that's going to solve this problem until we understand that we cannot stop the leakage that goes out of this. Sunrise had sheriff's departments every single night there because there was fights, and they ended up shutting down the cold weather shelter. I asked, how do we solve the problem? How do you get them into the shelters? Do you force them with the police? Do you force them with the sheriff's department? How do you get them into treatment? We had no answers. So I had no answers in the campaign. When I asked about it, I had no answers. So I'm saying these people that are in a law, they have no answers. They need answers. They need things. You don't want somebody to drop a nuclear waste site in your neighborhood, so don't drop it in theirs.
Anybody else? All right, that concludes the oral communication part. Just upcoming meetings on Wednesday, May 31st. We have a budget committee hearings over several of our special districts. And on Thursday, June 1st, the very next night, we have budget committee meetings on our county budget as well as our street lighting district. The June 6th meeting is canceled. Then we come to June 13th, which we talked about, and then June 20th. So is there anything I've missed, or anybody else have anything?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. Been moved and second. All in favor, raise your right hand. I see that we're adjourned. Good night. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, commissioners, for giving us time.